All right, and welcome everybody to Salon Shandy, the fifth installment of the Gothic Funk Press Salon series. Really excited to be back for the first time, I think, since it was last October that we did Salon Cider, I think was that the last one, Irene? Yeah. Okay. So we've got Irene with a brand new wonderful drink recipe today. We've got three wonderful readers. I'm excited, so I'm going to jump in just a moment here. Just so you know, this is the official Salon reading series of the Gothic Funk Press, Flint, Michigan's independent publishing company. And I invite you to go to gothicfunkpress.com if you want to hear about any of the other programming or publications we've got in the works. But enough of that. Let's cut right to our readers. First up today, we've got Irene Hodes, your proud virtual mixologist, and she has been many things. The current incarnation sees her as the director of 2 film festivals and cultural events at the Sonoma County, California Jewish Community Center. She spent over 10 years in the wine industry, making, selling, and educating people about wine, as well as about working in winery management. In the core of her being, she is a writer, artist, comedian, cook, traveler, wordsmith, and crossword puzzle enthusiast. During the pandemic, she writes and edits a daily film and culture newsletter and is creating a virtual international film festival. And she drinks a lot of very fancy wine, craft beer, and artisanal spirits because it's just what you do in Sonoma County. And this month in particular, you should check Facebook to find out about how you can participate in the Sonoma County Israeli Film Festival, which Irene manages. So with that, I will hand it over to.
Hi there. I'm so excited to be here. And today we've called our salon Salon Shandy because we're drinking shandies. And what's a shandy? A shandy is 2 things. It's beer and lemonade. Or rather, it's beer and something non-alcoholic. Lemonade, oftentimes it's a carbonated lemon lime, like a Sprite or a 7-Up. And I'm so excited to talk to you guys about it. This is a drink that is primarily drunk in sort of British Isles or Commonwealth countries. So in England, Ireland, Australia, South Africa. It is refreshing. It is 85 degrees outside where I am. I don't know about you guys, but it's delightful. No, it's not. And so I'm going to start off with one of the earlier references to the shandies, and I'm going to be reading you a poem, a drinking song that was published in 1867 in the Weston-super-Mare Gazette in England. And let's have this poem. A drinking song for summer. It is called Now Midsummer is drawing nigh, and time it is to think what, when a man is hot and dry, is best for him to drink. All minds on one point must agree that whate'er the bowl, a cool potation it should be to slake a thirsty soul. Some people to a sober glass would have us all adhere. I will not say that he's an ass who sticks to ginger beer. Nor do I hold that any man his manhood doth degrade, who when he might quaff Cooper can instead sip lemonade. Some not unwisely recommend a kind of half and half. Their ale with ginger beer they blend and call it shandy gaff. This compound hath for many men a merit of its own, that they can drink as much again thereof as ale alone. And there we have it. It's a smart man who mixes or waters down his beer because he can drink a whole heck of a lot more. In any case, this is such a great drink. And of course, it's very mildly alcoholic if you're watering down your beer with something else. But as you heard, the original term was shandy gaff. Really, the etymology is all over the place. They're not really sure where it got its name. But shandy gaff was sort of shortened to shandy in the early 20th century. But the earliest written reference is from around 1842. It was added to the Oxford English Dictionary in 1855. And there are many versions all over the world. In Germany, there's a popular drink called the Radler. And that is super, super, super popular. And that means cyclist. And there's a more concrete story about that one. In the 1920s, when the first cycling craze went about, when everybody was cycling all over Europe, a pub owner named Franz Kugler actually potentially created a cycling path, like on a map that went by his pub. And in one day, there were thousands and thousands and thousands of people that came by, and he started to water down or mix lemonade into his beer because he was running out. And this became really popular. And it's refreshing. A couple of interesting things that I learned was that Charles Dickens was a huge fan, referenced it many times in his works. And as this is a literary salon, I thought I'd quote Dickens before I started mixing some drinks for you. Charles Dickens said, "It's the perfect alliance between beer and pop." And he also said, and this goes into our spring has sprung and almost summer, "In such thermometrical state, no honest man drinks anything but shandy gaff." Thermometrical, a term that never caught on for hot weather, where shandy has still lived on. In Spain, there was a version, goodness, there are several different versions all over Germany. There's something called a diesel, which is lager and cola. There's also cola and Kölsch, which is another kind of beer in Cologne. There's a drink where they mix lemonade with Hefeweizen, and I'm going to be doing something with that too, with a wheat beer that's lighter. I'm going to make a couple different kinds here. And what else do I want to mention? It's a beer cocktail, which is kind of fun because you can still participate in alcohol without having something overly strong. We've so often mixed things with rum and gin and whiskey and things like that in our salons before, and they're really fun, but it's light and it's summer, and why not? Some other beer cocktails that you might have heard of, there's a snake bite. When I bartended in London, which was the first time I came across the shandy, which was super popular in the summer, some people would order snake bites. And coincidentally enough, and I've not encountered this afterwards, but there's this sort of old wives' tale that snake bites, which is half lager and half alcoholic cider, makes people mean. So my boss at this pub told me never to mix them, and he would mix them if he knew the person. Very strange. But there's also an Irish car bomb. There's a black and tan. You might have heard of a michelada down in Mexico. They have lots of spicy things. It's sort of like a Bloody Mary with beer. So many fun, light things can be made with beer. And an interesting one that I discovered today was a mojito shandy, which is essentially just a mojito, but instead of sparkling water or soda, you replace that with beer. So you have rum and sugar and mint. And how beautiful is that sort of combination? And lastly, and I'm not exactly sure how this transferred, but probably because it's inexpensive. It was originally in the 17th century a low-class drink, a working man's drink. Somebody could be called a shandy, might be a wild and boisterous person, maybe a little bit crazy, which might actually have led to the title of Tristram Shandy, the novel. And so that's sort of a speculation there. So like shandy could have been not quite proper, but wildly hailed as a popular drink for summer. And in some places, the low alcohol content exempts it from alcohol sale. And in Germany, it's so popular that they even can it like a cola. So without further ado, I'm going to mix you some. I know that we provided some recipes in the invitation for the event, but we have here a couple different versions that I'm going to make for you. So I have here a lager or a Pilsner. This is a local one, Trumer Pils to Berkeley. And I'm going to open that. And like I mentioned, I've also got this Allagash. This is from Portland. And it's not just a white, it's a wheat beer. So it's lighter in color. It has a very different character. This one has coriander and curacao orange peel already in it, which is so refreshing. So lemonade is what people generally use. It originated with ginger beer, which was lightly alcoholic, but mainly turned into ginger ale. So let's make a classic one. Let's make a lager Pilsner. And I already pre-made some lemonade, which I made with simple syrup. And I am in wine country, which is also citrus country. All of my neighbors have lemon trees and lime trees and orange trees. So I have a Meyer lemon, so it's a little bit different. I also have this beautiful seedless lime. Limes turn yellow, everyone. They're not supposed to be green, or they are, but they do. If you leave them on the tree for longer, they turn yellow. I also have some things. I don't know if you guys know that this is a good trick. If you are overflowing with citrus like I am, you can dry them in a fruit and vegetable dryer. So this is a blood orange dried disc. This is a lemon, and this is a lime. So this is actually from this year, and this is from last year, and they're both amazing. And you can keep them all year round and put them at the bottom of any cocktail. And as they hydrate, all of the juices come out of them as if they were fresh. So let's do this. I have several glasses out because I want to try a few different things. So here we go. We're going to do half. I'm not going to use the whole bottle. I'm just sort of going to eyeball this. Half beer and half lemonade. And I think what I'm going to do is give it a nice little spritz of some Meyer lemon and throw in one of these lemons here. It'll continue giving it so you can see how pretty that is. I don't know if my camera can't really see it. So let's taste this. Okay, it's absolutely delightful. And you should know I am single and home alone, so I'm going to be drinking a whole heck of a lot of beer after this just for you. Such a sacrifice. Oh, all right. And so we're going to try the Allagash White, which is, first of all, oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. You should try this. Coriander in beer, who knew, but it's great. Yeah, I think this is worth a shot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour this in here about, well, half, a third. I'm going to eyeball this. And I bought something that just tickled my fancy at the market the other day, Fever Tree, which is a great artisanal soda company. This is called aromatic tonic water, and I just tasted it. So it is tonic water, and I like that because there's that quinine bitterness to it, but it's super sweet. And it has all sorts of aromatic qualities to it. So this is sort of a soda in place of a sort of Sprite or a 7-Up. I'm going to top it with that. I'm going to put in my blood orange peel, give it a bit of a whirl. Oh my goodness. It's delightful. I could drink this all day. And you know what? You can. They reference this in one of the early references in literature, that it takes 4 to 5 pints to get you drunk. And I would believe that. So without further ado, have a really almost non-alcoholic summer. These are delicious. I'm going to drink these while I listen to some incredible literature. And I'm so excited to hear Erin and Kelsey and Elizabeth and Connor. Thank you so much for having me. Happy spring, happy summer. And yes, I run the Israeli Film Festival. I curate it, and that starts in 3 weeks in Sonoma County. So you can find me online or not, but there's wonderful films in the world. Support your independent artists. Take it away, Connor.
Cheers. I made mine with what I had on hand, which was the Guinness Baltimore Blonde, which is not bad. Anyway, moving right along. We will begin tonight with Elizabeth Blair. Elizabeth is a poet, editor, and workshop leader with an extensive background in music and the visual arts. She has been artist in resident at the Atlantic Center for the Arts, Wild Acres, the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center for the Arts, and ACRE. That's ACRE. Her publications include forthcoming full-length collection, Because God Loves the Wasp, Unsolicited Press, August 2022. 2 chapbooks, We, He, She, It from Dancing Girl Press, 2016, and Without Saying from Ethel Press, 2020. And poems in a wide variety of journals, including Harper Pallet, forthcoming, Feminist Studies, Cream City Review, and Jute. And her forthcoming collection, Because God Loves the Wasp, will be available on August 30th of this year. So please, everyone, welcome Elizabeth.
Thanks so much, Connor. So believe it or not, I've made it through the whole pandemic without doing an online poetry reading. So here I am, first time. I'm going to read from a couple different works tonight. First one is the book that Connor mentioned multiple times, and I got to make that bio more snappy to read out loud. I wasn't thinking, I gotta make it more like Iran. Yeah. Like yours was very fun. So I wrote a memoir. I don't know if you might have heard Paris Hilton in the news lately, talking about the facilities she was sent to when she was a teenager. I was actually sent to one of the same. She was sent to 4 different facilities. I was sent to one of the same ones that she was sent to just before her, actually, which I only mentioned because she's been speaking about it. It's suddenly topical, whereas before it was quite obscure. But yeah, I was sent to some places for quote unquote troubled teens that were quite awful. I was taken in the middle of the night to the first place, and I wrote a book about it. I was there for 2.5 years in these facilities from age 16 to 18 in 1997 to 1999. So I'm going to read the first 4 poems from the book, the opening of the book, and then possibly one more. Your blanket is the shell of an egg. You, young, raw. You're standing on it. The man with the handcuffs is generous. He gives you time. He helps, gets oxygen to your brain, makes your breast heave, a bird on a stoop, on its back, in shock. Get in the man's truck. A bone tucked in weeds, you breathe through hair. A bean, you're obedient, plucked from the pod, shapely on the plate. Soon, you'll deliver your babies, your voice, and testimony into their fields, then watch them be plowed under from the shelter of a ditch. They'll pay you in nightmares for as long as you live. It's helpful. It's love. You'll see when you're older, if you make it. For now, darkness, child locks. Wheeled up switchbacks, you're fixed, an insect in sap. Now you're pulled out into a plywood room. A woman confiscates your clothes. A little curtain. That's nice. The men won't see your breasts and ass, or wouldn't, but the woman stands where it should be drawn, an insufficient human curtain. She asks if you've ever cut yourself, demands you show her where. She knows what you are. She's seen things like you before. And the next is from later in the book, describing the treatment of somebody else. You only speak when spoken to by the staff, but the English boy speaks at will. He laughs, pulls his pants down, and shits in the mess tent. You look at the grain and the rough wooden bench. He kicks as they tackle him to the ground, and all the while, as they swear and shout and he fights, comes that laughter, making ripples in your eyes. They put him in a sleeping bag, wrap a tarp around it, tie it with rope, then leave him on the ground for days, on display, in March, in the mountains, in many feet of snow. They call it a burrito. Let him laugh, they say. Let him wiggle and roll. We were not killed. I am not ungrateful. I am not ungrateful. That is only my second time reading from that book. It is not easy. But I'm going to have to get used to it because when it comes out, there's going to be a lot more of that. So I'm going to read from a couple other things. Another project that I am working on, it's big and ambitious. It's a novel in poetry form about this old lady who's discovered, and it's this whole thing. I'm not going to give the backstory, but there's a section in it. It's the book revolves around violence against women. And so there's a section in it when a lot of, it's called The Dead Speak. I'm sorry that I'm so dark, but this is the situation. Oh, my braid's coming out. I can't handle it. That's great. The Dead Speak, it's murdered women speaking about their lives and about their deaths. So every time you hear a phrase, it's a different voice speaking. I'm going to be reading them all, but it's supposed to be this sort of cavalcade, this onslaught of just this waves of women speaking about their lives. So this is part of that section, The Dead Speak. And my timer just went into, yeah. And I will be ending this reading with something funny, so don't worry. Okay. This is a section called When He Had to Leave. When he had to leave, I held the edges of the chair. I rose and shut the door. Columns of men fell into line behind him. They called me his intended. In the slurry of the road, I found his cuff, smelled its scent. My papers were not enough. I didn't count the days. I held my face and raged. Bells rang, the tug of stone, the tug of rice. I held my breath and dragged myself upstairs, beyond the pillars. Approached the men, looked in their seeping mouths, searched their gray gardens. At night, reunions. In my fingers, dragons. I cut the time wisely in halves and halves again and again. I watched him grow small. I gave his children up. I followed him, was arrested, gave favors, stayed at home, cowered, was slandered, quarantined, did not cry. I did not cry. I organized supplies, gave myself away, became a tide that brought and left behind. Spoke to journalists, baked bread, was misquoted, was never asked. I was never asked. The border boundary checkpoint wall was too well endowed, too large for me to take in, take on. I brought a gun, sold my rings, was not afraid. I was not afraid. I lay down with them, was pulled through many hands, strand by strand, made it in, found him. I found him, gave him hope. I had to leave him there. In the hallway of the prison, the aisles of the field, his notes in my hand. I had a picture. I must have been outside the wasteland once, warm, dry, away from front lines, must have. I watched my son become a man who had to leave. I told my daughters, marry quickly before he's taken away by that sea. Men's fevers, golden, red, square. I didn't have the right papers. I waited in the bunker he built. I traveled to the coast, gathered what I had, could not wrap it. It spoiled and cracked. He did not come back. Okay. This is a brand new section of that book. I'm just gonna try it out on you guys. Here goes. They said I died because I danced. I went out alone. The orchids were in bloom. I was a thief, a wife. A marigold in my orange sweater, I stuck out. I took too long. I held him up. I spoke too loud. I blinked. I wore tall boots. I asked for money. I didn't answer fast enough. I didn't visit him, didn't bail him out. My period stopped. I didn't smile. I smiled too much. I hitched a ride. I was in the wrong place, wrong time. I was in the wrong place, wrong time. I was in the wrong place, wrong time. I wanted truth. Shoes. Won't tell you. I won't tell you. I didn't scream. I hid behind the bookcase. I asked him, do you have a light? I laughed. I broke a glass, took a shortcut, thought he was police, didn't want to be impolite, couldn't say no to his face. I burned his pudding, was no longer pretty, complained, gained weight, said I wanted to leave. I said I wanted to leave. I said I wanted to leave. I left, took the children with me, got a restraining order. I got a restraining order. I got a restraining order. I made him feel out of control, small, belittled, angry, scared, alone. I found new love. I didn't obey. I left. I stayed. I was too drunk to walk home alone. I rented a truck, my biological clock. I put on makeup, experienced success, took off my makeup, wanted to work. Did not run. I did not run. I wasn't strong. I danced. And I don't mean to be mean. I would never, I hope you don't take this the wrong way. He wasn't a bad guy, and I pushed his buttons. I mean, he was stressed, drunk, out of work, high, angry, jealous, suspicious, and he couldn't help himself. There was good in him. I saw him. I saw him at his best. It's not like he was all bad. He wasn't evil. He didn't mean to hurt me. He could be so sweet, but I died because he killed me. Okay. Promise you something funny to try to balance that. So here it comes. I am also doing a book that is an erasure of a giant encyclopedia of London where I lived for many years, and which I quite love. It's an old and stupid encyclopedia that is racist and sexist and ridiculous, and I'm trying to rewrite it into something much better. So I'm going to read you two sections of that. I know I'm almost out of time here. I'm going to read a little section about the Thames, the river, and one about Dickens, who was already mentioned tonight, which is great. And that's what I'll end on. The Thames has just killed somebody. Somebody died in the river. The Thames confessed into the air and tendered an apology for going from nowhere to nowhere, issuing sulfur and smoke, washing the dust heaps and patches of wretched vegetation, confusing the city, surrounding the tree-lined roads, cleaning the streets of thieves, rogues, wardens, and beetles, burying and beating the city, and forming its good address with a preponderance of widows. Its intention was never to break, mock. It has yielded to watermills, borne the breakup of its flow, lived laid out, split up, enclosed, was let to incompetence, satirized, stained, occupied by iron and stone, broken into, besieged, but eventually, owing to the hostility, began to demolish and demolish and demolished. That wasn't the funny part. That's just something about the Thames. So here's the very last thing I'm going to read tonight. It's an entry in my new erasure of the encyclopedia on Dickens. It says, Dickens is worth noting. He was altered by girls whose knee breeches, white cravats, gambling, long curls, and spying glasses induced him to pleasure in a hotbed of crime, known as the Squire of Idleness, arrested in a cellar, having been betrayed by Agatha Christie. Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was wonderful. And I'm super excited to read your new book when it comes out on August 30th. Next up, we have Erin Foley. Erin Foley's reporting and writing on Detroit, Blackness, and queerness has appeared in This American Life, Jalopnik, The Atlantic, CNN, several anthologies, and the PBS NewsHour. where he is currently a senior digital editor. A Detroit native, the city's first appointed chief storyteller and a former magazine editor, he is the author of How to Live in Detroit Without Being a Jackass. We need a Flint version of that. And editor of the Detroit Neighborhood Guidebook. He currently lives in Brooklyn's Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood. So please welcome Aaron Foley. Oh, and his forthcoming novel, Boys Come First, will be out this May 31st. So please welcome.
Thanks, Connor. Hey, everyone. I got to give since it is a Flint audience, I got to give a shout out to Scott Atkinson, who me and him both published through Belt Publishing in Cleveland, and Happy Anyway, the Flint anthology, is probably the closest you're gonna get the closest equivalent of anything that I could ever put out about Flint. And I've got a copy, but yeah, so I'll be quick. I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit about why my background is in journalism and nonfiction, but I've always wanted to be a fiction writer ever since I was little. But as most people find out when they're adults, you can't just dive into writing books. You might have to like get an MFA or English degree. I got a journalism degree, but I never lost the bug for fiction. And I used to read, I think my mom might be in the audience, but I used to read a lot of my mom's Terry McMillan books. I talk about Terry McMillan a lot because she is not only a role model for me in contemporary African-American fiction, but she's from Port Huron. A lot of people don't know she's from Port Huron. So there's a very strong Michigan connection, and it shows up in a lot in her work sometimes. I was telling one of my good friends that we had reached the waiting to exhale age, where if you know the movie or the book Waiting to Exhale by Terry McMillan, it's about 30-something Black women, all single, trying to figure out the turning points in their lives. Is something that my best friend and I, our moms were at that age when the movie was at its height. And then we reached that age and we realized we were going through some of the same problems with like dating and relationships and careers. And so that drove a lot of why I decided to write this book. So the summary of the book is 3 best friends, all born and raised Detroiters in their 30s. And I was kind of like looking at my friends' lives and things like that. And the context around what I'm going to read is 2 of the friends are meeting for the first time. There's one that knows both of them, but he introduces them after one of them comes back to Detroit, comes back home after living in New York for a while. So in Detroiters, we tend to talk really fast. So so if I talk too fast, please slow me down. But I know we're got some time. So okay. A few days later, Troy got to Motor City Wine at exactly 5:45 p.m. His mentality had always been that drinks at 6:00 p.m. sharp left room for one more hour of happy hour, but also meant the bar wouldn't be too crowded. He wondered how his 2 closest friends would react to meeting each other for the first time. Dominic scurried in just before 6:00 p.m., and before Troy had time to think, Remy arrived in unmistakably old Detroit glam uniform, a cognac shade mink bomber jacket, a tan Ralph Lauren knit cap, and Cardi's. Those are what Cardi's are. They are Cartier frames that all of us in Detroit wear, with brown tinted lenses. Beneath the Motor City excess was downtown Detroit simplicity, a black cashmere sweater, gray wool pants, and classic Ferragamo loafers. Everything was new except the shoes. Detroit men, gay or straight, cherished their years-old Ferragamos, proving to be just as attentive to their Italian shoes as they were to their cars. Remy removed his buffs, again, that's the slang for Cartier glasses, placing them inside their white case and strolled to the table. Bonjour, bitches. I see it's mink season already, Troy said. Just pulled it out of Dietrich's storage this morning, he replied, turning to Dominic. Dominic, the famous Dominic I've heard so much about. Remy, the famous Remy I've heard so much about. Give me a hug. We're family at this point. The 2 men embraced like cousins who hadn't seen each other for years. Dominic ran his hand across Remy's mink sleeve. Come on now, what is that, velvet? Just a little something, you know. The 3 men sat down, the bar around them beginning to fill up with people coming in after work. There was New Detroit and Old Detroit, and the Motor City Wine was New Detroit. It sure didn't behave like it. New Detroit consisted of anything built by white people when the city was at its lowest point. Corruption in the mayor's office, rampant crime, a recession, and finally, municipal bankruptcy created a perfect storm for hipsterpreneurs to swoop up cheap property on half-empty commercial strips and make their own kind of mayhem. Their patrons were the extended but closed-off circle of white millennials and late Gen Xers who had flocked to the city in droves, just like Black folks in the Southern migration, except they didn't bring solar seasoning with them when they came. Old Detroit was the product of that Southern migration, this city's conglomerate. They say that New Yorkers are South Carolinians in Tim's, Timberland boots, and Chicago is made up of Mississippians in winter coats. Detroiters then are Bamas wrapped in fur. Old Detroit never went away during the corruption and the recession, but it was having to adapt as New Detroit made itself comfortable. But Old Detroit still owned businesses, still was at church every Sunday, and still made sure its music was as melodious in every hood, even in Courtown, where Motor City Wine, a relatively new neighborhood addition, had jazz or Detroit house going every night. Plenty of old Detroiters have reciprocated by adopting the wine bar as their own. Dominic ordered cheese chimichangas. He wasn't supposed to eat them, but he really wanted to have something he loved back in the day. Troy ordered the shrimp quesadilla. He wasn't supposed to eat that either, but it was inexpensive without being obviously cheap. And Remy definitely shouldn't have ordered enchiladas topped with cheese and a side of sour cream, but he wasn't in the mood for something heavy like fajitas. All three men were lactose intolerant and in denial about it. It hits all Black folks at some point. For each of the three men at the table, it had all struck them sometime after they turned 30. Turning 30 really was a bitch, though as gay men, Remy, Troy, and Dominic were very much in tune with their health. They had no other choice because for decades, both pop culture and public service had inundated them with the threat of disease and the warning signs that could cause it. Fever, AIDS. Fatigue, AIDS. Night sweats, AIDS. Compound that with being Black and cowering from every disease that's ever struck anyone of African descent since they've been in America. And these three men never had a morning where they could just wake up and be healthy. Which high school did you go to? Remy asked. Don't judge. I went to U of D Jesuit, Dominic said. I dated a guy briefly that went to U of D, but he was a hoe, truly a man for others. What you trying to say? Dominic laughed. So where in New York do you live again? Don't change the subject. Hell's Kitchen. Oh, nice. I've always wanted to spend some time in Harlem. Me too, Dominic thought. But after he and Justin moved in together farther south, Justin had forbidden them from ever going north of 110th Street again. I'm actually really excited to be back home, though, Dominic said. I heard, Remy said, turning to Troy. I told him a little bit of what's going on, not the full story, Troy said. Well, Dominic said, taking a gulp of his wine. To make a long story short, I caught my boyfriend in our bed with another man on the exact same day the agency I was working for shut down. So yes, let's just say I'm happy to be anywhere but New York right now. First of all, I'm sorry to hear that. Second of all, I have some cousins on East Warren if you want to go back to New York and handle it. I'll even pay for the flights. I'm good, Dominic laughed, but I do appreciate the offer. How long were you together? 8 years. My God, are you still with him? We haven't talked since I came home. Would you ever talk to him about it? Dominic looked at his glass of wine, finger tapping each side. At this point, only two people other than Remy knew he had stolen away from New York City in the dead of night, Troy and his mother. Neither of them had asked about forgiveness. I don't know if I can. We were supposed to be monogamous. Keyword, supposed to be, he said, feeling the wine kick in. I told him from the beginning that my father cheated on my mother, and that's why they were divorced. I was trying to break this generational curse and have something happy. And what the fuck happened? This. Wait, were you married? Dominic paused again, looking into the bottom of the wine glass and focusing on the stem. No, I wanted to, but we weren't. Dominic sometimes wondered if gay Black men were even the marrying kind. Only 10% of all the gay men in America were married to each other. It seemed like there were always lots of Neil Patrick Harrises and Lance Basses and Jesse Tyler Fergusons. The few Black gay celebrities that were married, well, they took beautiful portraits in well-tailored suits, and the photos were circulated across the internet so much that you might know them just as well as you know your own friends. Gay Black men certainly had their hashtag relationship goals. They just have to idolize the same viral couples repeatedly. Dominic thought about the musical number Somewhere That Screamed from the film version of Little Shop of Horrors quite a bit. Yes, it was an overwrought campy parody, with Ellen Greene with the perfectly coiffed hairdo and all, pining over a life of TV dinners and Tupperware. But goddamn, it would be nice to have that life, Dominic thought. To be a spouse, to be loved automatically, and to have some predictability. To be a Mr. So-and-so carrying a brown bag lunch. To quibble over games of Monopoly. To go to sleep in the suburbs hearing only the wind outside. All while, remembering my mom's in the audience. all while having the kind of sex that would shift tectonic plates, of course. Okay, let's do a boomerang, Remy said, hoping to lighten the evening, to celebrate our new club. Are we in a club? Troy asked. Yes, this is a little clique now. We should have a name. I don't do cliques, not since 2002, Dominic said. So what do we call this? A threesome? Remy said. Come on, it'll be fun. I told you he was crazy, Troy said. I could use another friend, Dominic said. I already know we're going to be friends, Remy said. You and Troy have it, me and Troy have it, but now we've got a third. A third, Troy and Dominic laughed. Not like that, you dummies. A bitch is a little tipsy right now, but please just indulge me. Well, if we're a club, we have to have rules. Like the Little Rascals, Dominic said. The who? Remy asked. Okay, rule number one, Troy said. Rule number one, don't be a booty call, Remy saying. The boys couldn't help but roar of laughter, ignorant of the folks around them. Okay, but for real though, Remy said. Rule number one is, shit, I forgot what I was going to say. I need a minute, but until then, let's do a boomerang. The boys lifted their glasses and, per Remy's instruction, toasted on cue. The image looped to his liking, so he tagged each of them and posted it to his Instagram story. Remy had been using Instagram story a lot more ever since he'd seen that Roland was watching them. Roland barely used social media, something Remy had confirmed on his own after searching every platform for his name. Roland's Instagram was the only thing that turned up. Remy followed him, and almost immediately, Roland followed back. Still, it was hard for Remy to stay in touch with Roland elsewhere online. Sure, they texted, but Roland was insistent about not joining other platforms. When Roland wasn't in town, him watching Remy's stories from time to time was the only connection they had. It meant something. So Remy still wanted to show Roland what a fabulous life he was living. He also wanted to drop the 5,000-pound hint that Roland was welcome to join this life whenever he wanted to. 5 minutes after posting the story, Remy checked to see if Roland had viewed it. Only 2 people had so far, a friend from high school and a white dude he curved some time ago on Scrub. He is not watching your Instagram story, he thought. He's smashing the cakes of a far more good-looking man than you'll ever be, giving that man the best stroke you'll never have because he is giving you the bare minimum, right? That's hot.
All right. Thank you, Aaron, for that wonderful reading. And you can pick up a copy of Boys Come First on May 31st, or you can pre-order like I did, and it will arrive on your front porch. Our third reader of the day is Kelsey Ronan, who grew up in Flint, Michigan. Her work has appeared in Lit Hub, Michigan Quarterly Review, the Kenyon Review, Electric Literature, and elsewhere. She lives in Detroit and teaches for Inside Out Literary Arts. Chevy in the Hole is her first novel. Please welcome Kelsey.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to read a chapter from my book that's a little deep into it, but I think all you need to know is, so the book starts with the main character, August. He's a Flint guy who's been living in Detroit. He relapses and moves back home to have another shot at sobriety, and he's volunteering at a community garden and is super crushing on the character Monet, who is the coordinator of that community space. And so he finally gets her to meet up with him in downtown Flint, and this is in 2014. August walked downtown to meet Monet. The cigarette smell shampooed out of his hair, teeth brushed till he spat blood. From 2 blocks away, he spotted her on the sidewalk in a blue dress, hair tied in a scarf. She was talking to a girl in a long paisley skirt. College kids and hipsters lit cigarettes and wove around each other, opening and then obscuring his view of her. He kept waving and not seeing if she waved back. As the day had crawled interminably by, August imagined himself at the bar first. Because he'd convinced himself it was all low stakes, that they were just buddies hanging out, coworkers at a job where neither of them got paid, he gave her a loose, one-armed hug, then casually told her she looked nice, then ordered her a drink and coffee for himself, which would annoy the bartender but look more sophisticated than pop. It was all easy, and he'd know if he should ask her out for real next time, so there was no need to get weird about it. In reality, after waving like a one-man parade down Saginaw Street, he stopped a few feet from her with his hard jack hammering. He waited until the girl in the skirt headed back into the into the bar, and Monet finally turned to him. Her pretty face was always serenely inscrutable. Fuck, I'm late, I'm sorry. I'm early. Her lips were shiny with gloss, evidence of a girl who'd readied herself for a date. They weren't just hanging out as friends. There was nowhere to sit, so August left Monet standing along the wall and waited an eternity while the bartender brewed coffee, though August leaned over the bar to tell him to forget it, man, just give him a Verner's. 90s hip-hop pulsed from the speakers. By the time he returned with a vodka tonic, Monet drank through the stir before eating the ice cubes. She'd been pulled into the crowd by the girl in the skirt. A guy in a Michigan hoodie swooped in to hug her, and it occurred to August the volume of men she must know who were not volunteers from Narcotics Anonymous sleeping on their sisters' couches. He couldn't hear anything over them, just when Monet said, "Gus works with me over at the garden," brushing his arm so that the knot inside him momentarily slackened. He dipped away to buy her a second drink. In his mental rehearsal of the evening, when the band, which he used to play for, came out with their new drummer, he knelt into her, lips brushing her ear to say funny, disparaging things about them. He was the one who picked their name from a Ready for the World song, which she would appreciate as the secret Flint homage he intended. He danced with her in an "isn't this ridiculous" way that made her laugh and permitted him to graze her shoulder, her hips. But instead, his mind was a blank panic. On stage, some guy he didn't know was banging on a drum set nicer than the one he'd abandoned, and with more skill than he had. Their cover of Search and Destroy didn't even sound that bad. Monet lifted onto her toes to yell into his ear. "Is this weird for you?" she asked. She'd been eating the ice cubes and her breath puffed cold against his face. "No, drinking always made me sad. My brain can do that on its own." "I meant seeing your band." He excused himself to buy her a third drink, hating himself, the familiar violence. After the set, she followed him out to the sidewalk where he fished his cigarettes out of his pocket. For 2 weeks, he texted her from his shitty new job, from the bus, from his sister's sofa, from his grandparents' emptying house, and had felt himself gaining momentum, had congratulated himself on a performance that verged on charming. She hadn't asked anything that forced him to spill the whole thing, how he came to be a junkie volunteering away his empty days at a farm, and he'd felt himself grow more confident. He'd won this evening, and now he wrecked it, and he was considering making an excuse and parting ways. Then the digital displays and their new drummer came out the side door to load up. "It's wild seeing you here, man," the lead guitarist said. "I heard about what happened at the restaurant. Fuck." "This is Mo," he said. He was supposed to tell her the names of the band members, but he caught the grin the guitar player threw past her, and he regretted not saying his friend, Monet. But when the singer asked Monet what she did, August recognized in the uncharacteristic hesitance and exactitude of her answer, "Oh, a lot of stuff," and the way she was rocking slightly, rising out of her sandals, that he had bought her too many drinks. They told August they were playing at some after party on the east side. He and Monet should come along. With a promise to text the address, they went back into the bar, leaving August and Monet on the sidewalk. "Do you want to go back in? I'll get you some water." Monet blinked up at him. They were alone. It was the longest he'd felt permitted to look at her. She seemed to be deliberating something. Then she looked past him at the stupid statues of Billy Durant, Louis Chevrolet, and David Dunbar Buick, moonlight on the backs of their bronzed heads. "Maybe I should have eaten more today," she said. "The Coney Island open on Court Street. I can get you something." Then corrected, because it seemed to be a thing with her. "We'll both get something, but we'll eat it together." "No," she said. She wasn't drunk. And she wasn't hungry, and she didn't want to go to that party either. She pulled her keys out of her bag and told him where she wanted to go, the museum where she worked. Yes, she was serious. She pressed her keys into his hand. She just needed to run in and grab something. Monet told him to circle the museum, not to wait outside the back door where she directed him, but the parking lot was deserted, and he stepped out to smoke. In the back of the car was the book he'd given back to her, seedy jewel cases scattered over the seat. He recognized Alice Coltrane with her robe and dangling earrings on the cover of Journey in Sachidananda. Monet came back, hefting a gray clamshell box in both arms. I asked you not to wait here. He dashed his cigarette to the sidewalk and moved forward to help her. When she ignored his outstretched hands, he opened the back door. Drive away regular, she instructed. Did you just hustle me into being your accomplice? Drive, please. At the first red light, he twisted in his seat to the gray box, then turned to her. What, did you steal a tire off a Model T? They stole something from me and they don't even remember they have it, so I took it back. They won't even notice it's gone. And the museum doesn't have a Model T. They made those in Detroit. What are you so worried about? Do you not have a license? Do you not see this great getaway driving I'm doing? And I have a car, by the way. It just has some electrical problems. Oh, sure, she said, her shiny mouth a half smirk. It's just that usually when the lights green, you keep driving. But the street was deserted, the library and the music school dark, the jello mold of the planetarium shadowed. Well, you haven't told me where we're delivering the goods. She said, how about your place? Thank you.
All right. Great job, Kelsey. And Kelsey's book, Chevy in the Hole, came out this March. So you can head out tomorrow to your favorite independent bookstore and order your own copy. Highly recommend it. I was so excited by this group. Like just we had wonderful drinks, wonderful readers. Thank you, Aren, for your own literary contribution and for multiple shandies that we can try. This feels like the beginning of spring to me. So we'll see if we're not quite up to 70 degrees here yet, Aren, but we'll see if we can maybe crack 50 in the next week. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight. And I'll let you know when we're going to have our next salon.